The letter came on a Thursday. Margaret, 74, a widow living on one Social Security check, opened an envelope from the government that told her she'd been overpaid, $9,000 going back years she could barely remember, and that unless she acted fast, they were going to start holding back half of every check until it was paid off. Half. On a check that was already the only money she had coming in. And here's the gut punch. She hadn't done a single thing wrong. Years earlier, a caseworker had miscalculated her benefit, the government's own mistake, and now they wanted their error back out of her grocery money. If you get a Social Security check, or somebody you love does, you need to hear this all the way through, because right now, in 2026, the Social Security Administration can legally hold back up to half of your monthly payment to claw back an overpayment. And most of the time, that overpayment was their mistake, not yours. It starts with one letter in the mailbox. Miss the window on that letter, and the money just starts vanishing from your check automatically. But there are 3 specific forms and 1 ticking clock that can stop it, slow it down, or erase the debt completely. And that's the whole reason I'm making this. Stay to the end, because the very first thing you do inside the first 30 days matters more than anything else you'll do. And almost nobody knows to do it. Let me back up and explain how we even got here, because the rule changed more than once, and the whiplash is the reason so many seniors are getting blindsided. For a long time, when Social Security decided it had paid you too much, it would take a small slice of your check to get it back, a manageable amount. Then, in early 2025, the agency flipped to taking 100%, the entire check. Gone, until the so-called debt was cleared. The public backlash was immediate, because you're talking about people who have no other income, suddenly getting a $0 deposit. So a few weeks later, the agency pulled it back to a default of 50% for most retirement and survivor benefits. 50%. That's where it sits now. Better than losing the whole thing, but if half your check disappearing still sounds like a catastrophe to you, you're right. For a lot of folks, it is. Now here's what genuinely bothers me about this one, and why I don't want you to feel an ounce of shame if that letter ever lands in your box. An overpayment very often is not your fault. You didn't lie. You didn't cheat. What usually happens is the agency miscalculates a benefit, or is slow to process a change you did report, or one department's paperwork doesn't talk to another's. And for months or years, they quietly send you more than the formula says you should get. You have no way to know. The deposit shows up, you live on it because that's what it's for, and then one day they catch their own error, add it all up, and send you a bill for thousands of dollars, as if you were the one who made the mistake. So let's get that out of the way right now. Getting one of these letters does not make you a criminal. It makes you the last person to find out about a paperwork error. Let me give you the kind of example I run into constantly. A widow starts receiving a survivor benefit after her husband dies. Somewhere in the machinery, her own older retirement benefit never gets fully switched off. So for a year, she's quietly being paid a little from 2 records at the same time. She has no way to know. Both deposits look normal to her, and she assumes the government knows exactly what it's doing, because why wouldn't it? Then an audit finally catches it, and suddenly she owes back every extra dollar plus the gut drop of a letter that reads like she stole something. She didn't double dip. She didn't hide a thing. A switch didn't flip on the agency's side of the desk. And the bill still lands on her kitchen table. That's the true shape of most of these. An error upstream and a senior downstream left holding the tab. Okay, here's the part that saves you. So listen closely. When that letter arrives, you are on a clock, and the clock is everything. The single most powerful move you can make is to respond inside the first 30 days. Because if you formally ask them to pause while they review your case, they generally will not start pulling money out of your check until they've made a decision. Think about what that buys you. Instead of watching half your check vanish next month while you scramble, you freeze the whole thing in place and give yourself room to fight it properly. 30 days. That's the window almost nobody knows about, and it's the difference between a problem you manage calmly and a crisis that hits your bank account before you've even understood what happened. And let me be blunt about why the rule is built this way, because it matters. The system is set up so that if you do nothing, the collection just begins on its own. The whole burden is on you to raise your hand and say, stop. That's backwards, and it's unfair to people who were never at fault in the first place. But it's also just the reality you have to work inside. So the moment that envelope shows up, treat the date printed on it like a fuse that's already been lit. You do not have to solve the entire thing in 30 days. You don't have to have the answer. You just have to raise your hand inside those 30 days and put the brakes on. That single act buys you all the room you need. So what do you actually do in that window? This comes down to 3 forms, and which one you reach for depends on your situation. Let me give you all 3 by name in plain English, so you walk in knowing exactly what to ask for. The first form, and for a lot of people it's the most important, is the waiver. That's Form SSA 632. A waiver says, I should not have to pay this back at all, and you can win it on two grounds. One, that the overpayment was not your fault. Remember, it usually wasn't. And two, that paying it back would leave you unable to cover your basic needs, your rent, your food, your medicine. Here's the beautiful part about the waiver, and write this down. Form SSA 632 has no filing deadline. None. Even if you've had the letter a while, even if collection already started, you can still file it. If it's granted, the debt goes away, not reduced. Gone. The second form is the appeal, officially a request for reconsideration, Form SSA 561. You use this one when you flat out disagree that you were overpaid, or you think they've got the amount wrong. This is you saying, I don't believe I owe this and I want you to look again. File the appeal quickly, inside that 30-day sweet spot, and you both challenge the debt and hit pause on the collection at the same time. And the third form is for when you accept that you owe something, but 50% of your check is simply more than you can survive on. That's Form SSA 634, a request to change the recovery rate. This is where you say, fine, I'll pay it back, but not at half my check. I can do it at a rate that still lets me eat. You show them your income and your expenses, and you propose an amount you can actually live with. They can drop that 50% down to something small and manageable, stretched over time. So what actually wins a waiver or a lower rate? Numbers. Specifically the gap between what comes in and what has to go out, and you'll want that on paper before you ever pick up the phone. Sit down and write it like a simple 2-column list. On one side, your monthly income, your check, any small pension, anything else. On the other side, your real must-pay costs, rent or mortgage, utilities, food, medicine, insurance. Add them up. If those basics eat all or nearly all of what you bring in, and for most people living on a single Social Security check, they absolutely do, then that gap is exactly the hardship the waiver was written for. You're not begging anybody for a favor. You're showing them, in their own plain language, that taking half your check would leave you unable to keep a roof over your head. That one honest page is the most persuasive thing you can carry in, and you have every right to ask for an in-person conference to walk them through it face to face, instead of fighting it over a phone line. So look at what you've got in your hand now. If it wasn't your fault and you can't afford it, the waiver, Form SSA 632, and the debt can vanish. If you don't think you owe it at all, the appeal, Form SSA 561. If you owe it but can't survive on half a check, the rate change, Form SSA 634. 3 doors. And there's a fourth quiet piece of good news buried in the rules. If the whole overpayment is a smaller amount, around $2,000 or less, the agency has the authority to waive it off much more easily, sometimes with a single phone call, if it wasn't your fault. So do not assume a smaller bill is just something you have to swallow. Ask, here's exactly how to move, in order, so you don't fumble it. The day that letter arrives, don't panic and don't ignore it. Both of those are how people lose. Read the date on it, because your clock starts there. Then call Social Security at 1-800-772-1213, or better yet, ask for an in-person appointment at your local office, and tell them plainly you want to file a waiver or an appeal, and you want collection paused while it's reviewed. Get the form by its number so there's no confusion. 632 for the waiver, 561 for the appeal, 634 for a lower rate. Bring proof of your income and your monthly bills, because that's what wins a waiver or a rate reduction. And keep a copy of everything you file with the date. This is a paperwork fight, and the person with the organized paperwork wins it. Let me tell you who this hits the hardest, because these are the people I most want to reach before the letter does. It's anyone living on Social Security as their only income, the widow, the widower, the person with no pension behind them. Because for them, half a check isn't a squeeze, it's a cliff. It's people on disability, SSDI, and SSI who get these notices at higher rates. And it's the folks who are most likely to just quietly comply out of fear or respect for a government letter and never file a thing. Those are exactly the people the waiver was built to protect, and they're the ones who don't use it. If that sounds like someone you love, they need to hear this before an envelope ever shows up. And one more warning, because it's an ugly wrinkle on top of all this. Scammers know these letters terrify people, so there are fakes going around. A call or a text claiming you were overpaid and demanding you pay it back today with a gift card, a wire transfer, or your bank login. So burn this into your memory. The real Social Security Administration will not phone you out of the blue and demand instant payment by gift card, and it will not threaten to arrest you over an overpayment. A genuine overpayment shows up as a mailed letter, and you always, always have the right to appeal it or ask for a waiver. You never owe a same-day panic payment to anyone. If somebody is rushing you and scaring you, that by itself is the tell. Hang up and call Social Security yourself at the number you looked up, never the one they handed you. So let me bring it all back together. In 2026, Social Security can hold back up to half of your monthly check to recover an overpayment, one that, more often than not, was their mistake, not yours. But you are not powerless, and you are not on the hook the way that letter makes it feel. The clock is your first weapon. Respond inside 30 days and ask them to pause collection. Then pick your door, the waiver. Form 632, which has no deadline and can erase the debt. The appeal, Form 561, if you don't believe you owe it, or the rate change, Form 634, to bring that 50% down to something you can live on. One number gets you started, 1-800-772-1213. The people who lose their money to this aren't the ones who did something wrong. They're the ones who got scared of a government envelope and did nothing and let the clock run out. You're not going to be one of them because now you know the 3 forms, and you know the 30 days is where the whole fight is won. Do me one favor on your way out. Send this to someone who lives on their Social Security check and nothing else. The person who would open a letter like that and just assume they had to pay, no questions asked. This might be the thing that keeps half their check in their pocket. If it helped, give it a like so it reaches more seniors. Subscribe if you'd like me to keep watching your back like this. And tell me down in the comments, have you or someone you know ever gotten one of these overpayment letters? I read them all. And if that envelope ever shows up, don't be afraid of it. Start the clock, ask for the form by name, and make them prove it.